times hotter than ever before. It's exactly what it looks like to stare into the will of God. It can be scary. It can be frightful. It can be painful to the flesh, with no promise of a reprieve. There is only the invitation, go in. And when those Hebrew men were cast into the furnace, they were already dead. They were dead to all their ambitions. They were dead to the joys of hearing the prophetic messages that Daniel had shared. Dead to any thought of wives or children. Dead to all hopes and dreams of the future. Only one thing mattered to them, and that was obeying the will of God. And when you gladly embrace His will, when you have truly died to yourself, something is released in your heart that nobody can explain or give to you. It places you beyond the reach of men and demons. It is not released until you go into the furnace. And when you do, a marvelous glory awaits those who embrace it. The furnace door represents a crossing into God's will. On this side of the door is an army of mocking enemies, visions of pain and suffering, demons screaming at you. God doesn't expect this of you. He loves you. Didn't He say He'd give you the desires of your heart? You become a fanatic. But once you cross the line and embrace the will of God, something incredible happens. Jesus manifests Himself to you in ways that you would never think was possible. When the Hebrew children were inside the furnace, Jesus was there waiting. He didn't reveal Himself right away. First they had to decide to embrace His will. And when they did embrace it and had died to their selfish wills, Jesus manifested Himself to them. What they thought would be painful coals was instead green pastures and gentle breezes, because Jesus had gone before them. The very moment you walk into the furnace, when you cross to the other side and you embrace His will, you'll turn around and you will see Jesus. He will be there in a manifestation that you cannot have in any other way. He will do three things for you. He will become everything in your life. He will be your joy, your expectation. He will touch that place in your heart that nobody on earth can touch. I love my wife and my children. The love and compassion and friendship that I receive from them brings great joy to me. But there is only one joy in my life, only one person who can meet the deepest needs in my life, and that's my Lord. And I too have met Him in the furnace. Jesus will do what He will do for you, He will do for others. The next thing that Jesus will do is to cause all your bondages to fall off. Did you hear me? All of your bondages will fall off. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went into the furnace, every bond was broken. Every hurt was healed. Every fear was vanished, because Jesus moved in very quickly. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire. They have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God, Daniel 3:23. The king saw 4 men walking, talking. The 3 young men were embracing and hugging the fourth. Are you hurting today? Do you know how to get your hurt healed? It won't happen simply because God sends someone who understands you, because no one understands you the way Jesus does. No, the only one who can meet you completely is Jesus Himself. Whether you have emptiness or sorrow or anything else, when you walk into the furnace of His will, all your bonds will fall off. And finally, you'll receive a witness, a testimony. Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and said, Ye servants of the Most High God, come forth, come hither. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent His angel and delivered His servants that trusted in Him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they may not serve nor worship any God except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree. Every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against their God shall be cut in pieces. Their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Daniel 3, 26, 30, said by a heathen king. You see how quickly God changed the whole thing in such a short time. It went from mockery to wonder. This is what's going to happen in your last days. People won't turn to the big-name preachers. Instead, they'll look to the simple, lowly ones who have yielded themselves wholly to the will of God. Those who have known the heart of Jesus have come out of the furnace because they've been with Christ. And many will gather around them. Please talk to me. I see you giving yourself to the Lord, and I want to know more about it. And then finally, in closing, doing the perfect will of God sometimes requires going back into a family situation that you've been running from. Maybe you're in a family situation that seems hopeless. And you've cried out, Lord, I can't handle it. I know you don't expect this of me. You think you can't go on much longer. And if you haven't run, you probably feel like doing it. But it is never God's plan to run. Another man that Brother Elroy brought up, Jacob, had a terrible family situation. It was more than he could handle. It threatened his very life. He had robbed his brother Esau of his birthright and had angered him to the point of murder. And so how did Jacob handle the problem? He ran from it. He didn't have a Gethsemane. He didn't die to self-will and ask God what to do. Instead, he listened to the voice of his flesh, to his mother Rebekah, who said, My son, obey my voice and arise and flee. Genesis 27:43. And so Jacob ran. He was on run for 20 years. 20 years of heartache and trouble. And finally God told him it was time to face it. Arise and get thee out from this land and return to the land of thy kindred. 31:13 of Genesis. God was saying, Jacob, you're never going to know fullness in me till you turn and face this problem head on. Walk into the furnace. And so Jacob journeyed back with his family to make things right. And what do you think he saw? It was Esau. Esau was coming out of the desert to meet him with 400 angry soldiers ready for revenge, as though he was thinking. And so Jacob cried, Oh Lord, I need a miracle. You've got to change my brother's heart. Take away his hatred for me. He had a fear and anger in his heart toward God because he had only submitted to God's will. He didn't learn to embrace it. Perhaps things are not right in your family. Do you have an alcoholic husband or a wife who doesn't understand you? You got financial problems? You see, these are the things that Esau and his army represent. Pain, every argument of the flesh, every reason your mind can conjure why you can't face your hopeless situation. The devil goes on to tell you you've obeyed God. You've done right, but nothing has changed. Your loved one's heart is still hard. In fact, it seems worse. If you don't run now, you'll spend the rest of your life in a living hell. And the truth is, you can't go on if you're just going to submit. But you can go on if you do as Jacob did. He had his Gethsemane. It was a night of dying to his selfish wills. He prayed that night, because I've prayed it as well. This situation is too much for me. He's manipulated and tried to make things happen. Tired of doing things my way. I can't run anymore. I want my life to be right with you. And Esau may kill me and my family. He may take everything I have, but I'd rather be with you in glory than go another day living this way. That night, Jacob died to himself. God crippled him so he could never run again. He could only hobble into the future. Holy and dependent on the Lord, but something had happened. Joy filled his soul. When Jacob walked across the brook to meet Esau early that next morning, he was absolutely fearless. Are you facing an Esau in your life? Does this mean my husband will never change? That nothing in my life is ever going to be better? Let me tell you something. God changed Esau. He took the heart of stone out of him. And by the time Esau met Jacob, he fell in his brother kissing and embracing him. There was total peace. So don't be afraid today to step into the furnace. As long as you have the peace of Jesus, the perfect will of God, you can stand anything, anywhere, at any time. Your circumstances may not change, but you will. He will fill your soul with joy and heal your hurt and pain. Your life will be full and blessed because He will be everything to you. You don't have to run. You need only to look to Him. Embrace His perfect will for you. He will give you His exceeding joy in the very midst of your present and fiery trial. Now we're going to open the altar up for you to come. Brother Lauren, did you have something for the anointing service? Come at this time.